Hi, I'm Will Ashford and I'm the founder and CEO of TrueState. At TrueState, we help companies solve some of the most pressing operational issues with our AI native analytics platform. In this video, I'm going to walk you through best practices for prompting across the TrueState platform. Let's get into it. To get started, what is prompting? Prompting is the process of giving good, clear instructions to natural language AI systems. It's not just about what you ask, it's about how you ask it as well. As these models get more capable, your ability to craft effective prompts becomes one of the highest leverage skills that you can develop. So here's a breakdown of where prompting comes into play on TrueState. It's important across your interactions with agents, within the LLM inference nodes, in the pipelines, in automations that you might craft, as well as more specifically in similarity search and universal classification tasks. Let's first go over agents. On the TrueState platform, agents help you with analytics, building dashboards, cleaning data, running predictive models, you name it. They're flexible, but they perform much better when they have the right context. And as a human interacting with these agents, there are three types of context that you need to think about. The first is data context, and this covers things like ensuring that the agents have access to the clean, structured data sets that you want them to have access to, managing things like descriptive column names, including the data dictionaries, and also making sure that there's a short summary of what each of the data sets is about. You don't have to think about this too much, as this is mostly covered behind the scenes in the TrueState platform. What you do need to consider is including them into the context window. The second type of context that you need to consider is organizational context. This is questions like, what is your business? What departments within your business exist and what do they do? And what are the current priorities of the organization? You can set up these and more context settings within the organization settings in the TrueState platform. The third and perhaps most important context for you to remember is the problem context. And this is questions like, why are you doing this analysis? Who is the analysis for? What output do you need? Do you need charts, commentary, stats? Yes, agents can ask for clarification, but the more precise your prompt and the more of these questions that you answer when you're engaging with them, the faster you're going to get to value. In addition to agents, we have a much more explicit and pure use of large language models on the TrueState platform, and that is the use of large language models in pipelines. It's important to remember that these steps in pipelines don't have any memory or context outside of what is configured explicitly in the step. What you put in the prompt is all they see. So here's how to structure these prompts to get better performance. The first is to supply the LLM with a role. This is defining who they are and what they're doing. For example, you're a paraphrasing assistant if you're looking to clean up or make text more succinct. The second part is task instructions. Here you need to be crystal clear. For example, simplify the following text while retaining key information. The third is structure. It's really important to specify how long you would like your output to be. For example, one paragraph in under 100 words. The fourth optional but often helpful part to remember in prompts for LLM inference nodes is examples. This is provided some input example, what would an ideal output be? This dramatically improves the performance of LLM inference nodes and will help you to get to higher quality outputs. The fifth part to include here is the input data that you would like these LLM inference nodes to work over, right? So without the input data, we're just repeating the same prompt again and again and again. LLM inference nodes are designed to be applied across tens to hundreds of thousands of text records and to do something to those records. So it's important to inject the data into the prompt window itself. And the final piece to remember is any critical information here. For example, not to include things that are in a JSON style, or ensure to not include any jargon. This will really depend on why you're using an LLM inference node, but if there are any key parts to include at the end, just make sure you include them as a final reminder to the system. Next up, we have automations. Automations are repeatable processes that chain multiple LLM steps together, as well as calls to external APIs, other data sources that you have within the TrueState platform. These can be quite complex to design, but if you get it right, can be incredibly powerful. Here are some things you should consider when building automations on the TrueState platform. You should split complex logic into small and focused steps, right? So we should keep each prompt tightly scoped and not trying to cram too much into a single prompt. We're not trying to classify, rewrite, transcribe in some alternative fashion, all in one LLM prompt. A good rule of thumb here is if you're debating whether or not to break a single prompt or a single step in an automation into two, you probably should. Take, for example, trying to use an automation in a sales process. In this example, we might want to take raw information from a prospect's website and generate a highly personalized email. We could one-shot this, which means to just take the raw text from the website and throw it directly via one prompt into create me a personalized email targeted at this person given their context, their organizational history, etc. Or we could break it down into more specific structured steps. And this is really where best practice comes in for automations. What we want to do is think about what happens throughout each of those phases. When we're trying to create a personalized email for someone, what are we actually doing? First, we're trying to find context about that organization or that person. The first part is probably take that raw HTML and give me a summary about the organization. Who are they? What do they do? What do they sell? Who are they selling to? That gives us a rich backbone for the downstream pieces, right? Once we've got that rich backbone, we might start to glean key insights out of that. We might have, for example, certain product lines that we're trying to sell, and we're going to say, is this person well suited or within our ICP for selling those different products? That's the second step. Third, now we have that context and we have a bit more specific information for our use case, is then to apply and build out this personalized email. And so throughout this process, we're going to get a lot more structured and compliant, reliable outputs versus if we just try and go from one raw website to the output. And this is the whole idea around automations. Break them up into small sections that you know an intern could probably achieve. And if you can get to that level throughout your task, if you can break it down to such an extent that it's just a simple question with some input data and it's just trying to get one answer, then you're going to get much higher performance throughout the process. The next distinct domain that we're going to consider in prompting is similarity search. This is where embeddings come into play, and we turn text in this process into a single point in a really high dimensional space. We might imagine this as a meaning universe. What we're looking for here is to try and find the closest points in that meaning universe to our search query. And the important things to watch here are the text length as well as the tone. Right? So the text length, if it's too short, the algorithms have a hard time placing the text within this meaning universe. If it's too long, you actually contain multiple distinct ideas within the same text body. And so finding a single location in this meaning universe becomes an impossible task. What we're aiming for is 1 to 3 sentence snippets that we can use to easily find a location in this meaning universe. It's critical to use LLMs through this process to help us find a more succinct or in some cases more verbose version of the text we're trying to search for. In addition to text length, we have tone. So we have the idea that highly emotive or neutral tones will actually have a different place within this meaning universe. What we want to do here is make tone uniform, not just in our search term, but within the text samples that we're searching across. Because if we're very salesy within our search term, but maybe all of the text that we're trying to search is incredibly to the point without any emotion, we're going to be looking in very different parts of that meaning universe. And because the tone is so different, we're not going to get the search results we're looking for. So again, just like we can use LLMs to adjust the length of either a searchable piece of text or the query that we're presenting within a similarity search use case, we can use LLMs to normalize the tone. And you'll find much better performance within similarity search related tasks if you're able to normalize this tone. The final domain that we're going to consider is universal classification. In this domain, we have two pieces of text that we're working with. One is the sample of text we're trying to classify, and the other is the statement that we're trying to use to classify that sample of text. These algorithms return a score from 0 to 1, indicating if the text sample supports or does not support the statement in question. Right? So we might consider the statement, Jane drove to the market in her yellow Volkswagen Beetle. Jane owns a car would be a statement that is supported by the text, whereas the car Jane drove was pink is not supported by that. So in this style of use case, there are a few effective tips for getting better prompts. The first is to phrase the statement as a declarative statement. In those ones, for example, we had the car Jane drove was pink. It's not a question, it's a statement. We're not asking if the car Jane drove was pink, we're saying it. The second is not to provide vague logic or assumptions in here. We don't have any information that we provide the LLM outside of this information, so it's important to be very explicit here. And the third and final tip is to keep things neutral and factual. This is very literal in its interpretation of everything, and so if you're trying to be a bit more emotional, if you're trying to include things that might be more subjective, the algorithm is not going to pick it up and you're going to have poor performance. Effective prompting is the key to unlocking the full power of TrueState and AI-driven analytics. Whether you're working with agents, automations, or classification tasks, small improvements in prompt design lead to huge gains in performance. If you're just starting out, or if you can only remember a few things, keep prompts short and clear, use examples, test with real data. That's it for this guide. I hope you found it helpful, and I'll see you in the next one.